Millionaire marries woman in a coma, and she wakes up with a shocking revelation. It was a November evening, rain pounding down like a broken sky over the winding mountain highway north of Napa Valley, California. Nathan Caldwell, 44, a renowned tech mogul from San Francisco, was driving his black Tesla back from a digital health summit. His mind was fixed on one thing: the $200 million deal he was about to sign, a contract that would double the size of the medical software empire he'd built from his college dorm room. This was supposed to be the night of triumph, but fate had written a different script. The rain thickened, and the headlights barely pierced the sheet of water ahead. Nathan switched on autopilot, then off again minutes later. He never trusted machines more than himself. He was always in control. At 44, he'd survived market crashes, high-risk investments, and media scandals. But nothing had prepared him for the sudden loss of traction. At the very curve where he usually slowed down, the car began to slide. The tires skidded helplessly over the wet asphalt, the rear end fishtailed, and the whole vehicle spun sideways as if pulled by invisible hands. The world around him slowed. Raindrops stretched like falling stars. The wind screamed like voices from another world. One side, jagged rock. The other, a sheer drop. And the car, sliding toward the edge. Nathan didn't even have time to scream. What rushed through his mind wasn't the deal, the assets, or the fame. It was unfinished things, unspoken words, and the face of his aging mother who still called every Sunday. Then, boom! The car smashed into the guardrail, flipping over like a toy, crashing down the slope before landing on its side, front crushed inward. Pain. His body felt shattered. But Nathan was still conscious. Blood streamed from his forehead, his trembling hand clawing at the door, but the metal was mangled shut. Then he heard it. Drip, drip, drip. Fuel. Every drop ticking like a death clock. He could feel death coming. Cold, steady, indifferent. The rain poured harder, as if the sky itself were weeping for what was about to happen. And then she appeared, running through the storm like an angel sent from above. Nathan Caldwell saw the figure of a woman approaching the wrecked car without hesitation, without a single thought for her own safety. She was young, her dark hair soaked, her simple clothes clinging to her body from the rain. Her eyes shone with a determination Nathan had never witnessed before. With strength that defied her slender frame, she tried to pry open the driver's door. "Help! Somebody help!" she shouted into the empty road, but no one else stopped that night. "Don't worry, I'll get you out of here," she said in a strangely calm voice as she fought against the twisted metal. Nathan couldn't believe his eyes, a complete stranger risking her life to save his. At last, after a heroic effort, she managed to open the door just enough to pull him out. She held him up with arms that were delicate yet steady, guiding him away from the vehicle, now spitting sparks in warning. "Who are you?" Nathan asked, but she only gave a faint smile and said, "Someone who believes everyone deserves a second chance." And then the world went dark for them both. The explosion lit up the night sky like a man-made sunrise, sending shards of metal in all directions. When paramedics arrived 20 minutes later, they found Nathan unconscious but still alive, lying dozens of meters from the burning car. But the woman who had saved him lay motionless in his arms, her head wounded by a flying piece of metal from the blast. They tried to save her as they rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. She had fallen into a deep coma. 3 days later, Nathan woke up in the ICU of St. Augustine's private hospital. His head wrapped in gauze, arm in a sling, chest bound tight with bandages that made breathing a conscious effort. The physical pain was overwhelming, but nothing compared to the panic in his eyes as he whispered to the nurse, "Where is she?" "The woman? The one who pulled me from the car." The nurse looked at him like someone emerging from a dream. Then she slowly nodded. "She's upstairs, in critical condition." No one knew her name, no ID, no visitors. Her chart simply read, "Jane Doe, a woman with no identity." They said a piece of shrapnel from the explosion had caused a severe brain injury. 3 days had passed, and she was still in a deep coma. No response. No clear hope. Nathan went silent, then turned his face to the wall and let the tears soak into his pillow. A billionaire, once commanding rooms full of power, reduced now to a man helpless before an unnamed woman lying between life and death. Nathan forced himself out of bed, ignoring the searing pain and the doctor's urgent pleas to rest. Step by step, he dragged his weakened body down the hospital corridor, following the numbers until he reached room 409. When he opened the door and saw her lying there, fragile, pale against the stark white sheets, his heart clenched. The wires and tubes that kept her alive formed a forest of medical equipment surrounding her motionless body. Her breathing was so faint, her chest barely moved. Nathan stepped closer, uncertain if he even had the right to be there, unsure whether he should approach the woman who had sacrificed everything to save him. "Hello?" he whispered, his voice trembling, feeling foolish talking to someone who couldn't hear. "I don't know if you can hear me, but thank you. Thank you for saving my life." He sat on the chair beside her bed, studying every detail of her angelic face. She had long lashes, lips that kept their shape even in unconsciousness, and a small scar on her forehead that gave her a quiet mystery. The hands that had once fought through twisted metal to rescue him now lay still on the sheets. Nathan, trembling, reached out and gently touched her fingers. They were cold, but still alive. "I don't know who you are, but I swear I'll find out," he whispered as tears streamed down his cheeks. Days turned into weeks, and weeks became ritual. A ritual more important than any board meeting or business deal. Every morning at exactly 7 a.m., Nathan came to the hospital with fresh flowers, usually white roses, because to him they were as pure as the act of love she had shown him. He sat by her side, telling her about his day, about the deals he canceled just to stay, about the guilt that gnawed at him every time he saw her lying there because she had saved him. "The doctors say you should have woken up by now," he confided one rainy afternoon in May, as raindrops tapped gently on the hospital window. "But I think maybe you need time. Maybe your soul is still deciding if it's worth coming back to this cruel world." But what haunted Nathan most was the strange feeling every time he looked at her, as if there was something familiar he couldn't quite name. Sometimes, as he spoke, he thought he saw her eyelids flutter, like she was trying to wake up. Other times, when he held her hand, he swore he felt her fingers move ever so slightly. The doctors told him it was just the imagination of a hopeful mind. But Nathan knew there was more. An invisible thread had formed between them, something beyond gratitude or compassion, as if their souls had recognized each other in the moment of that fateful crash, as if they had waited for this encounter their entire lives without even knowing it. As time passed, Nathan's visits became more intimate, more tender. He began arriving after midnight, when the hospital was quiet, when only a few night nurses remained, nurses who had grown used to his silent presence. In those solitary hours, Nathan became someone else, vulnerable, honest, unguarded. He spoke to his sleeping angel about secrets he had never shared with anyone, not even his family. One August night, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face, he whispered, "You know, I've never really loved anyone before. I've had women, yes, but always for convenience, for work, for image. I'm 44 years old, and only now do I understand what it feels like for your heart to beat because of someone else." His voice was soft as breath, barely lit by the pale glow of the medical monitor. Nathan had grown thinner. His once perfectly tailored suits now hung loose. The sharp eyes that once dominated boardrooms now shimmered with a gentleness that surprised everyone. My mother calls every day, asking when I'll return to my normal life. My partners think I've lost my mind, but they don't understand. This is my real life. You are my real life. And he always ended with the same whisper. If you can hear me, come back, please. Come back. Some called him crazy. Others said he was lost in a delusion. But Nathan knew. Something inside him had shifted forever that stormy night. And now he couldn't stop thinking about her. The nurses had begun calling her Mr. Caldwell's future bride. People chuckled gently whenever he adjusted her pillow or leaned close to whisper something into her ear as if she might whisper back. The doctors weren't as hopeful. Some had begun to gently advise Nathan to prepare himself or even move on with his life. But he refused. He hired the best specialists, imported advanced equipment from Europe, turning room 409 into a private intensive care unit. I don't care what it costs, he said. She gave me life. Now it's my turn to give it back. Every night, Nathan sat beside her, sometimes just watching her face, eyes closed, skin pale, dark hair gently fanned across the pillow. He would whisper like a prayer. I don't know who you are, but I know I'm not leaving, no matter what. He was no longer Nathan Caldwell, the cold CEO, the man of numbers. He had become someone learning how to love, not through conditions, but through patience. His sister even went so far as to hire a psychologist to speak with him, but Nathan refused any treatment. I'm not insane, he told anyone who would listen. I'm in love. For the first time in my life, I'm truly in love. But the nights were the hardest, when reality struck like a blow without warning. Some nights he fell asleep in the chair beside her bed. Other nights, when despair consumed him, he would plead with her to wake up, to give him a sign, any sign, that she was still there with him. If you can hear me, he whispered into the stillness of the night. Move a finger, blink, do anything, to let me know you're still here. But she remained motionless, beautiful, distant, like a fairy tale princess, waiting for a kiss to break the spell. The pressure from his family reached its peak when his mother, Helen Caldwell, a 70-year-old woman with a steely temperament she had passed down to all her children, unexpectedly arrived at the hospital one October afternoon. Nathan was reading a book aloud to the sleeping woman when he felt the unmistakable presence of his mother at the doorway. Nathan Alexander Caldwell, she spoke, her voice forged in the same fires that had shaped his childhood. This has to stop immediately. She wore her most formal black dress and a string of pearls, looking more like she was attending a funeral than visiting a patient. Her coffee-colored eyes, just like Nathan's, held a mix of worry and firm resolve, a look he knew all too well. Mother, don't start, Nathan replied without looking up from the book, though his voice wavered slightly. He knew she had come prepared for a battle, and after 6 months of daily hospital visits, Nathan no longer had the strength for another fight. Your brothers and sisters are worried. The company is losing major contracts, and you're here, wasting time on a woman you don't even know. Her words struck like slaps, but Nathan gently stroked Isabel's hand. I may not know who she is, but she understands me better than anyone ever has, he whispered, knowing how absurd it sounded, yet feeling every word in his heart. This is madness, Nathan, his mother shouted, losing her composure for the first time. This woman is in a coma. She can't possibly know who you are, let alone love you. You're in love with a fantasy. But this time, Nathan looked up and met her gaze, and Helen fell silent. Because in her son's eyes, she saw the same fire his father once had when he said, I love you. The same unwavering intensity, the same certainty. This isn't a fantasy, Mother, Nathan said calmly, despite the storm roaring inside him. She's the most real person I've ever known, and if you could see what I see when I look at her, you'd know I could never walk away. The days that followed became a relentless battle between Nathan and everyone around him. His siblings visited, armed with logical arguments about business responsibilities. Close friends invited him on trips, to parties, anything to pull him out of the hospital. Winter arrived slowly in California, but to Nathan, each day without her awakening felt like an endless season. One morning in December, as soft sunlight spilled through the hospital window in room 409, Nathan stood by her bed, his hands trembling as he held a small white box. Inside was a simple, elegant diamond ring, perfectly sized for the delicate fingers he had held every day. He'd bought it the week before. No reason, no promise. Just a truth his heart couldn't ignore. It was time. That afternoon, he approached his attorney and then a judge. He asked a question that made most people blink in disbelief. "I want to marry someone who's in a coma." Judge Miller, an old man with tired eyes, sighed and then nodded. "The law doesn't forbid it, but you'll need documentation and a strong moral reason." Nathan had both, and a heart that no longer knew how to lie. And so, on a quiet Sunday morning, the wedding took place. Only 5 people were in the room: Nathan, Judge Miller, the head nurse, who had quietly witnessed the whole journey, Nathan's assistant, and the sleeping bride. The ICU room was transformed into something ethereal, filled with white roses, softly burning candles, and classical music whispering from a small speaker. Nathan wore his best black suit, the same one he'd worn to sign the biggest deal of his life. But this time, there were no headlines, no applause, only a trembling heart and a love that asked for nothing in return. "Who gives this bride away?" the judge asked, following tradition. "Her own brave heart," Nathan replied, his voice thick with emotion. "She gave me her life without ever asking for mine." Then he read his vows, words he had scribbled during sleepless nights by her bedside. "Honey, I don't know who you were before that night. I don't know your dreams or fears. But from the moment you ran into fire to save me, I knew you were the one I'd been waiting for my entire life." And when the judge finally said, "You may now kiss the bride," Nathan leaned down and placed a kiss on her lips, soft as a petal. A kiss that didn't ask to be returned, a vow that expected no answer, a miracle waiting for its moment to be born. Right after that kiss, something miraculous happened. As Nathan slowly leaned back, his hand still clutching hers, the heartbeat monitor began to spike. Isabel's eyelids fluttered. And then, a breath. Everyone in the room froze. Her eyes opened slowly, as if she was pulling herself out of a century-long dream. Brown, luminous, full of haze, then focus, and finally, they found Nathan. "Nathan," she whispered, hoarse but unmistakably clear. "I'm here," he whispered back, gently squeezing her hand. "It's me, Nathan." Then came the words that shattered everything. Nathan Everett Caldwell. He froze. In 8 months, he'd never once spoken his full name in front of her. How did she know? How could she say it so perfectly? The room fell silent. The nurse stood stunned. The judge took a step back, and Nathan felt the blood drain from his body. She continued, her voice still weak, but resolute. "I need to talk to you. Alone." The others left. Nathan remained, heart pounding like a war drum. Isabel tried to sit up. He rushed to help, but she shook her head gently, gesturing for him to sit. "Before you say anything," she began, "you need to know why I was there that night, on that road, in that storm." He opened his mouth to protest, but she lifted a trembling hand to silence him. "First, my name is Isabel. I wasn't there by chance, Nathan. I'd been following you. For months." A cold wind seemed to cut through the room. Nathan froze in disbelief, but her eyes, though tired, did not waver. "I knew you drove back from Napa every Friday at 10:30 p.m. I knew your license plate. I even knew you turned on your fog lights earlier than most people." "Why?" Nathan whispered, as if afraid of the answer. And then Isabel told him. "In 2018, I worked the night shift as a janitor at your software company. I just finished my night school degree in finance. I was working to pay for my younger sister's leukemia treatment." Her voice began to tremble, not from weakness, but from pain. "One night, I found some printed documents thrown next to the shredder. Hospital sponsorship contracts? Something wasn't right. I noticed the numbers didn't add up. I studied accounting. I knew what I saw. I thought someone had misplaced them, so I left them on your desk with a sticky note. 2 days later, I was called into HR, accused of unauthorized access, theft of confidential documents. I was fired. No hearing. No one listened." Nathan's face turned pale. Memory returned like a flood. He remembered a data leak once, urgent emails. A contract returned with a note. His assistant said some janitor had touched the papers. He dismissed it, too busy, and he had signed the termination order himself. Isabel went on, her voice calm but full of silent agony. "I lost my job, no reference, no company would hire me. My sister died 6 months later. I lost our apartment, took a night job at a roadside diner. But I never hated you, Nathan, even when I had every reason to." His tears began to fall, heavy, broken. "I just wanted to understand, to see whether the man who ruined my life had any soul left." "And on that stormy night," she paused, choking back tears, "when I saw your car losing control, I didn't think. I just knew I couldn't let you die, even if my mind said I should." Nathan collapsed into the chair, head in his hands, like he'd been struck straight in the chest. Each word, each memory stabbed deeper than the last. "You took everything from me," she whispered, "and still, I'm the one who saved you. Not out of love, not out of vengeance, but because she chose to be better, even when he didn't deserve it." The room remained still. Nathan couldn't speak. He simply sat there, his body folded over like the weight of the world had landed squarely on his shoulders. Isabel watched him for a long moment before she spoke again, her voice no longer laced with blame, but with the kind of exhaustion that had evolved into quiet surrender. "I didn't plan to save you, Nathan, and I didn't plan to forgive you. I just couldn't walk away. It was instinct, the kind of choice I'd spent years learning how to make, to not become bitter, even when life gave me every reason to be." She turned her gaze toward the window, where the afternoon light spilled across the floor like a soft golden ribbon. "I used to think I wanted to see you fall. There were nights, while working at that diner off the highway, I'd wait for your car just to confirm you were still alive, still rich, still thriving, while I was scraping by, one shift at a time. I thought I was following you because I needed answers, but the truth is, I wanted to prove to myself that I'd moved on." She looked back at him, and for the first time, her luminous eyes carried a forgiveness not for Nathan, but for herself. "When I saw your car losing control, I didn't see the CEO who ruined my life. I saw a man about to die, and I knew, if I walked away, I'd forever be the victim. But if I turned back, then I was reclaiming my own story." Her voice faltered, but each word pierced Nathan's heart like glass. "I didn't save you for revenge. I didn't save you to make you fall in love with me. I saved you because I needed to know who I was once the past no longer defined me." And then she exhaled softly. "You may think you owe me your life, Nathan, but the truth is, I owe you too. Because if not for that night, I'd have never known how strong I truly was." He knelt beside her bed, clutching her hands in his, feeling unworthy to even touch her. "I used to think you were an angel sent to save me, but the truth is, I'm the one who needs forgiveness. I'm the one who needs saving. Isabel gently placed her hand on his cheek, a touch so tender Nathan couldn't understand how she could offer it after everything. "During those 8 months in a coma, I wasn't completely gone," she said softly. "I heard your voice. I felt your presence. I could sense your pain, your love, your remorse." The words hit Nathan like a breath he forgot to take. She had heard everything, every midnight confession, every whispered vow, every fragile moment he thought no one else had witnessed. "I heard you change," she continued, "from a man consumed by work to someone willing to let go of everything for love. I heard you fall in love with me, not for how I looked or what I could offer you, but for the person I could become. And that taught me something 5 years of bitterness never could." They both broke down in tears. "It taught me that people can change, that true love can grow out of guilt and regret, that sometimes fate pushes us to the very edge just so we can finally see who we are." Nathan listened to every word as if it were truth spoken from heaven itself. He knew then that he had been given a gift he didn't deserve, but one he could never refuse. "I forgive you, Nathan," Isabel whispered, "not because you deserve it, but because it's the only way either of us can be free from the past." But then Isabel cupped his face in her hands, her gaze turning sharp and unwavering, so intense it made Nathan tremble. "But if you truly love me," she said, her voice steady and clear, "if everything you've said over the past months is real, and if you truly want to build something with me, then you have to prove that the man who fell in love with a comatose woman is brave enough to face the consequences of his past." Her eyes burned with fierce determination, the same fire he had seen in them that stormy night when she saved his life. "I want you to use your wealth, your influence, your power to make things right. Not just with me, but with everyone who's been hurt by the cold, calculated decisions you made in business." The next morning, before dawn had even kissed the white hospital walls, Nathan sat quietly in the corner of the room. The dark circles under his eyes showed he hadn't slept, but this time his gaze held no panic, no guilt, only resolve. Isabel slept peacefully. She had said everything she needed to say. Now it was his turn to answer through action. That day, Nathan left the hospital for the first time in weeks, but he didn't go home, and he didn't go to the office. Instead, he walked straight into the office of the most respected labor rights law firm in San Francisco. "I need a team," he said, "the best in fighting for workers wrongfully terminated. I want to start a foundation, and I want to begin with the people I once harmed." The attorneys exchanged glances, stunned. No one expected this from a billionaire long known as a profit machine. But Nathan wasn't looking for approval. Over the next few days, he sold a portion of his tech holdings, a move that shook the financial world. The media buzzed, shareholders panicked. Nathan replied with only one sentence: "There is no value greater than making right what you once made wrong." He returned to the hospital with a plan in hand. A nonprofit legal center on the very ground floor of the hospital where Isabel had woken up. Its mission, to help workers harmed by the cold machinery of corporate decisions. Its name, the Second Light Foundation. He signed the founding charter at exactly 11:47 a.m., the time Isabel had opened her eyes, just 1 week prior. After years building empires with logic and data, Nathan was now building something else, with heart. And for the first time, he understood what true responsibility meant. Not to companies, not to shareholders, but to people. 6 months later, the ground floor of St. Augustine Hospital, once just a patient entrance, now gleamed with a new bronze plaque. The Second Light Foundation, where second chances begin. Inside were cozy rooms, legal aid offices, counseling spaces, a library filled with labor rights resources. The walls were lined with photographs, smiling faces of people once fired unjustly, exploited, or forgotten, now reunited with their families, thriving in new jobs, living lives they thought they'd lost. Founder, Nathan Caldwell. Director, Isabel Moreno. She had fully recovered, though her body still bore faint scars. Her eyes now shone brighter than ever. During her rehab, she quietly re-enrolled in school, this time studying labor law. Now she was personally handling some of the Foundation's most complex cases. Nathan was no longer just a leader. He had become a supporter, a listener, a learner. "We're building something bigger than you and me," Isabel once said as they reviewed their 1,000th intake form. "This isn't just about love, it's about creating a humane system." Every week they met with groups of workers, people Nathan once never saw within the corporate walls he'd built. He looked into their eyes and said, "I'm sorry, and I will do everything I can to make sure no one else goes through what Isabel went through." With every case resolved, every life restored, Nathan felt himself inching closer to true redemption, not through apologies, but through consistent action. And of all the documents he'd signed in his life, from $100 million contracts to legal frameworks spanning dozens of pages, none had ever felt as right as this. Their second wedding had no white roses, no hospital rooms, no beeping monitors, or nurses whispering in the halls. This time they stood inside a small church nestled in the heart of a humble Latino neighborhood, where Isabel had grown up, where Sunday afternoons were filled with the sound of bells and the scent of sweet cornbread from the bakery across the street. There were no donors, no investors, no powerful guests. Instead, the pews were filled with familiar everyday faces, staff from the Second Light Foundation, a few former co-workers from the diner where Isabel had once waited tables, workers who had been helped by their mission, and one very special guest, the head nurse, who had seen everything from day one. When the doors opened, Isabel walked in, alone. No one gave her away, because, as Nathan once told her, "You don't need anyone to give you to me. You chose to walk toward me on your own, knowing the worst parts of me. And still, you stayed." The room grew still as they faced each other beneath the simple arch of the chapel. No extravagance, only gentle eyes and hands held tightly, as if nothing else in the world mattered anymore. The priest asked, "Did you write your own vows?" Nathan nodded, locking eyes with Isabel, and began, "I promise not only to love you for the rest of my life, but to live a life worthy of your forgiveness. I promise that every decision I make, every contract I sign, every dollar I earn, will always consider its human cost. I promise that our love will not be just ours, but a reminder that people can change, and sometimes something beautiful can rise from even the worst mistakes." Isabel smiled, tears brimming. Then she replied, "I promise not to see you as the man you were, but as the man you choose to become every single day. I promise that our love will be a force for healing, not just for us, but for everyone who's been hurt by indifference in this world." They didn't need music. They didn't need fireworks. They needed only one thing: truth, and a vow sealed with action. The small house tucked in the Sonoma Valley wasn't as luxurious as the mansions Nathan once called home. There were no glass ceilings that followed the sun, no polished floors reflecting a curated life. But since moving here, he hadn't missed a thing. Each morning, just as the sun rose over the lavender hedges in the yard, Nathan would wake early to steep tea, check the humidifier, prepare a light breakfast, then gently rest his hand on Isabel's growing belly as she read on the wooden rocking chair by the window. "Are we all okay in there?" he'd whisper. "They're kicking," she'd smile. "Your voice gets them excited." Isabel was expecting twins, and in just a few weeks they would welcome 2 baby girls, gifts from life itself, as if the universe wanted to say, "Thank you for not giving up." Nathan had never pictured himself as a father, much less a gentle one. But since the news, he had changed. learning how to bathe a newborn, practice swaddling, buying parenting books, and every night whispering stories to her belly, sometimes using words he never had the courage to say out loud. "I've broken so much," he said one moonlit night. "Now all I want is to learn how to protect." The little home was filled with quiet things, a wedding photo above the fireplace, a whiteboard tracking doctor visits, hand-stitched toys Isabel made with love. She had stepped back from daily operations to rest, while Nathan scaled down his commitments, working only remotely. The rest of the time, he was a husband, a father-to-be, a student of the ordinary. The day their daughters were born, a soft rain fell. Nathan didn't cry when he heard their first cries. He simply held Isabel's hand and bowed his head in silent thanks. For everything. For her. For them. And for the first time, life wasn't something to control. It was something to honor, moment by moment. They named the girls Luna and Clara. One name for the moonlight, one for clarity. Because after everything they'd endured, in a life once ruled by shadows, these two little girls were living proof that light can return, soft, steady, and real. Neither of them was perfect. Nathan had once been a symbol of indifference, wrapped in success. Isabel, strong as she was, had once been shackled by her past. But what made their story extraordinary wasn't the love they shared. It was how they chose to love after everything had fallen apart. Isabel didn't forgive because she was moved. She forgave because she knew forgiveness was the only path to free herself. Nathan didn't change out of fear of losing her. He changed because he finally understood that a life built on the pain of others is no life at all. They met as strangers, one trapped in a burning car, the other running through a storm. And somehow, fate led them to a common point, a place where both chose to become better versions of themselves. Their story is a reminder to all of us. No one is born perfect, but if someone believes you can be better, then maybe, just maybe, you can truly begin again. Thank you for staying with us until the very end.